Welcome back to 60 Minutes. Now to the crucial breakthrough in a 23-year double murder investigation. The 3rd of May 1991 was just like every Friday afternoon in the small Victorian town of Portland. Margaret Penny had her regular hairdressing appointment with her friend Claire Acocks. Within hours, both women were dead, stabbed to death in the hair salon. The killer has never been caught, and for more than 2 decades, this unsolved crime has haunted the town. But now, new evidence has emerged, and police are closing in on a prime suspect. For nearly 2 centuries, the harbour town of Portland, on the rugged Victorian coast, has been a safe haven, sheltered anchorage amid the winds and wild waters of the Southern Ocean. But 23 years ago, on a quiet Friday afternoon, something unthinkable happened here. A crime so brutal, so shocking, that the people of Portland would never feel safe again.
A lot of terrible things happened that day that did not have to happen. And I'm always looking for answers. Why did it happen? And ultimately, who's responsible?
Back in 1991, Tim Acocks was one of Portland's junior constables. On the afternoon of May 3rd, he was called in early for duty. The usually quiet station was frantic.
There was just a junior constable, much as myself, on the front desk. I asked what's going on, and he said 2 old dears in the salon have been found dead. Well, it was at that moment that I put 2 and 2 together. One of the old dears would have to have been my mum.
Tim's mother, Claire, was the part-time hairdresser at the Old London Coiffure on Portland's busy foreshore. Midway through her regular Friday appointment with 58-year-old Margaret Penny, both women were stabbed to death. It was an incomprehensible crime against the most unlikely of victims.
So this is Mum in the hospital with James. James has just been born.
At 49, Claire Acocks had embraced the next chapter of her life. She and her husband Peter were doting grandparents to Tim and wife Linda's new son James.
And this is only a week or so before it happened.
To think, what your life was like at that point.
I know.
Having no idea it was just around the corner.
No.
From that day forward, it was basically our lives. Just dealing with it, coping with it, trying to understand it. It's who I am now.
Is it any easier with time?
No, it's you learn to cope with the grief and you learn to cope with the anger. But I've just got this need to have someone held accountable, somebody brought to justice. That's very important to me.
It was exactly this time, 3:30 on a Friday afternoon, when the murders took place just behind those walls. Just look how busy it is. There's a school 200 metres down the road, so parents would have been picking up their children. Dozens of people would have been walking past those windows. So how on earth did no one see anything? That's the question that has plagued this town for more than 2 decades.
It changed the town, didn't it?
It rocked the town, yes.
Changed it completely.
Everyone was double guessing who maybe someone amongst them was a killer. Wives and girlfriends were just on edge. They didn't know whether it could happen in their home or whether it could happen at their workplace. Everyone was fearful. It was just the not knowing.
They were thinking, well, who could be next? Could it be me? Does this offender live amongst us in Portland? Is it my next door neighbour? So it really affected the way people lived. It affected the way they conducted themselves.
Like everyone in this area, Leonie Wallace marks that day as the moment Portland lost its innocence.
It was like it was a city crime in a country area, and it seemed really bizarre. I expected in the next few days to hear that there was some sort of explanation, and when that didn't occur, like in the newspapers, there was nothing in the news, I thought, that's weird. That makes no sense at all. How is that possible? And yet no one's apprehended. So I just thought there's more to this story.
Leonie's decision to write a book about the case led to an unusual double life. By day, a high school teacher.
Year 7, may I have your attention, please?
And busy mum to 2 young boys. By night, author, investigator, and Australia's foremost authority on the Portland murders. She's examined every shred of evidence to piece together the events of May 3rd, 1991.
So this is one of the crime scene photos. So this is the shampoo room.
And it's the shampoo room where the women were killed.
At 2 p.m, Margaret Penny arrives at the salon for her weekly hair setting appointment with Claire Acocks. At 3:05, Mrs. Acocks slips out to collect her knitting from the car. It will be the last time either woman is seen alive.
Was something happening in the salon whilst she was out of the salon? That has been one of my main scenarios that I go over. Did she walk into something that had occurred whilst she was out?
The killer empties the till and takes cash from the women's handbags. A total of $900. Then forces Mrs. Acocks and Mrs. Penny into the shampoo room at the rear of the salon. He ties them to chairs using whatever is at hand, even a curling wand and a hairdryer. And at some point covers their heads with hairdressing capes. He remains in the building for up to 90 minutes.
So the chances of being caught were incredibly high. So this killer must have had an incredibly high threshold for anxiety to remain inside the salon for an extended period.
The salon wasn't the only business in the Old London Inn. 3 people in neighbouring offices heard screams that afternoon. The dentist upstairs and a draftsman and insurance agent on the ground floor. They were just metres away. All of them dismissed the cries as either teenagers fooling around or a child who didn't want their hair cut. Tragically, none of them investigated further.
If any of those people had have maybe paid a little bit more attention and thought, gosh, that is unusual, well, then we may have had a stronger lead.
That's the stuff that can tear you apart if you think about it too much, isn't it?
The what ifs you deal with every day.
The women are killed, still tied to their chairs, stabbed repeatedly in a final murderous frenzy. The attack on Mrs. Penny is particularly ferocious. Finally, the killer slits his victims' throats.
Can you bear to even think about it?
No. It's not something I I want to think about too often. I know it was horrible.
And this is your mother we're talking about.
I know.
It's always there.
What kind of person does this to two innocent women?
It's just an incredibly brutal crime, and that's why the robbery gone wrong angle doesn't really fit with me.
You look at this and think that it was personal.
To me, that looks like it's either personal or this person was a total psychopath.
Early on, both husbands were ruled out as suspects. Peter Acocks was on the golf course with mates at the time of the murders. Robert Penny was at home babysitting his 5-year-old granddaughter.
We don't know what the motive is. We're keeping an open mind on that, but we haven't ascertained any motive at this stage.
Swamped with information from a shocked community, police spoke to more than 5,000 people and followed leads to every state in Australia, even overseas.
You don't know now if, you know, someone's going to walk in and stab you or... yeah.
Rumours flourished, accusations flew, and everyone in Portland had a theory.
There was rumours that I had worked in the drug squad and it was a payback for something that I was involved in. Rumours that it was a blow-in from out of town, that he was in and out in a day and gone and never to be seen again. The Portland harbour is a very busy harbour with international shipping coming from all over the world. Could it have been someone from one of the boats? The possibilities were endless.
Years passed and the leads dried up. The case turned cold.
When the lights go off at night and you climb into bed, that's probably when I do most of my thinking. What did we miss? What could have been done different?
Tim Acocks stayed on at Portland Station for another 17 years in the hope of an arrest. But his heartbroken father, Peter, left town 2 years later. He's never remarried.
He tried to stay, but he just couldn't. There was reminders every day. Dad's done it very tough. He still finds it difficult to speak of today. He misses her every day.
Margaret Penny's husband, Robert, also found it too difficult to stay in Portland. But his behaviour became fodder for town rumour.
He didn't attend the inquest. He didn't accompany his wife's body to the cremation. And he also married about 16 months after the murders. So some people felt that that was quite unusual.
It was with the blessing of both families that Leonie Wallace mounted her one-woman investigation. And she was shocked by what she found. Basic detective work had not been done in the crucial early days after the murders.
Well, there were just aspects of it that I felt were bewildering. And if Mrs. Acocks or Mrs. Penny had been my mother, I would be furious.
Key witnesses were overlooked, including former Mayor Robert Menzel, one of two people who may have actually seen the killer.
I saw the guy coming out of that doorway over there and coming across the street in front of the Keep Left sign and then disappearing up Benwick Street.
He reported what he'd seen to police the following day.
He was in one heck of a hurry wherever he was going anyhow.
And you've never seen that man again?
No, I don't think I've ever seen the guy before or since.
But it took police 2 years and 9 months to take Bob Menzel's statement. And that wasn't their only mistake.
There was a second key witness, and it was a young woman who was walking her dog about a block from the crime scene. around the time of the murders. And she was approached by a man who was barefoot and had blood on him, and he attempted to engage her in conversation, said something along the lines of, "Oh, nice dog."
So she potentially came face to face with the killer?
Possibly.
How long before police spoke to her?
Well, that information got lost. She wasn't spoken to until almost 3 years later.
Leonie Wallace had already exposed failures in the police investigation. But then she unearthed new evidence, a new witness that would bust this 23-year-old cold case wide open and pinpoint a prime suspect who had been under their noses the whole time. Welcome back to the crucial breakthrough in a 23-year double murder investigation. On Friday the 3rd of May 1991, Margaret Penny and her friend Claire Acocks were stabbed to death inside a Portland hair salon. The killer has never been caught, and the town has lived with the awful question, is there a murderer living among them? Now, thanks to a local school teacher turned part-time detective, there's an extraordinary breakthrough. Leonie Wallace has spent 5 years trawling through every piece of evidence to crack the Portland murders cold case.
I'd say I'm hardworking and I'm persistent and I'm determined and I'm tenacious, and I think in terms of this investigation for the homicide squad, that translates into me being a pain in the bum.
Leonie's persistence paid off when she discovered a key witness had been ignored by police and a suspect who'd been under their noses the whole time.
He was strange in how he presented himself, you know, strange enough where you think that, you know, something's not right.
Sean Smith has owned the general store in Portland for 25 years and was behind the counter on the weekend after Margaret Penny and Claire Acocks were murdered.
Barclay Street store.
One particular customer came in that day who Sean will never forget. Margaret Penny's husband, Robert Penny.
A gentleman come in and asked for something to get blood out of something, and my wife at the time said to me, "Do you know who that is?" And I said no, and she said it's Mr. Penny, and I thought it was very unusual for somebody that just had their wife murdered to come in and acted the way he did.
What did you do with that information?
Well, we passed that on to the police. We rang the police probably 10 minutes after he left, and we thought that would be valuable information for the police.
And what happened then?
Nothing.
In 23 years, police never even called Sean. It was only last week that police finally came to see him.
What do you think about the fact that it took them so long?
Oh, not good enough. Absolutely not good enough. You know, they wanted people to give information, and you know, we did it, and I thought that was pretty valuable information, and it just, you know, got lost in the system, I suppose.
Police didn't formally interview Robert Penny or even take his fingerprints until 1995, 4 years after the murders. But it wasn't until this month that they finally took a sample of Mr. Penny's DNA and told him he is now the prime suspect in the Portland murders. Now 82, Mr. Penny lives in Melbourne with his second wife, Kim.
Hello, Alison Langdon from 60 Minutes. I was hoping to talk to you about your wife's murder.
I don't need all this rubbish at this particular time.
Are you aware that you are now the prime suspect in her death?
Yes. Yes, I've been made aware of that by the police, and that's it.
Yeah. Did you kill your wife and Mrs. Acocks?
Come on. We were very going up to Portland for some peace and quiet and a lovely life, which we'd always had, and here we go.
Why do police think you did?
Ask them. I've nothing more to say.
Can you tell me about going to the general store and asking about removing bloodstains?
No, I know nothing about that. I've heard about it, but I don't know anything about it.
But since Leonie's book was published, more evidence against Mr. Penny has emerged. On the night of the murders, he told 3 people unique details about the crime.
He apparently told them that Margaret had been killed with a tail comb, which was a type of comb used at the salon.
And why was that an issue that he told them that?
Well, that wouldn't have been known until the autopsy, which was conducted a couple of days later. So it seems unusual that he would be in possession of that information at that stage.
You know the weapon that was used to kill your wife, and police didn't release that information.
I'm sorry. Enough is enough.
How do you feel being a prime suspect in your wife's murder?
I'm absolutely shattered. Absolutely. I just don't understand the progress of what's happening, so please, now leave me alone.
For 23 years of their 25-year marriage, Tim and Linda Acocks have lived under the shadow of this unsolved case, knowing with each passing year the chances of bringing his mother's killer to justice were fading. Now finally, they have reason to hope.
I'm encouraged by this line of investigation, but it's just a wait and see game. Just wait and see.
To catch up on stories you've missed, download the 60 Minutes app for your iPhone or iPad. You can also visit our website, 60minutes.com.au.